Good afternoon. I'm Jim Inkster, your moderator. The 47th edition of Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards is in the House. Your number 877-217-5757. And we are getting closer and closer to a legislative session. We'll be talking about that and much more with the governor. March 9th is the open, so according to my math, that's less than 3 weeks away, about 19 days away from right now. We'll be talking about the opening of the 2020 session. And between now and then, of course, there's Mardi Gras. And Governor, you're from Amite, Louisiana, but Mardi Gras is a celebration everywhere in our state, isn't it?
It is, and of course, I've already participated in the D.C. Mardi Gras. That's always a tremendous annual event in Washington. And then next week is the main event, Monday and Tuesday. And I'm wishing everyone, I'm hoping everyone has a very safe and enjoyable Mardi Gras, asking people to make sure that they are exercise some common sense out there, because as you know, sometimes that doesn't happen. But it's one of the great things about our state, and I've been talking to the state police. The mayor of New Orleans and I visited about this yesterday, and I know that everybody's ready. The people in New Orleans, with the state's help, they put on big events about as good as anybody in the country. Mm-hmm. They really do. And I know Mardi Gras next week is just going to be tremendous, and I hope everybody gets a chance to enjoy it.
You mentioned Washington Mardi Gras. You were also in Washington for the National Governors Conference. How did that go?
It was great. It was weekend before last, and I went up, and I think it was about 45 governors from around the country who showed up, which is an exceptionally large number. And we had a couple of days of meetings where we share ideas with one another, and we had an opportunity to have lunch at the Vice President's residence, the Naval Observatory, mm-hmm. and we had a black tie supper on that Sunday night at the White House with the President, and then a business meeting with the President and the Cabinet on Monday morning. And so it was a really good, long weekend, very beneficial, and of course, every time I travel, I'm always happy to get home, and that was no exception. But the NGA conference was, I thought, really good this year.
Now, the president, of course, came after you rather hard during the campaign, but you've had a few chances to rub shoulders with him since then. Have they been cordial meetings?
Yeah, and they have. So we had a phone call on the Monday after the election, and then the next time I spoke to him was when he visited the Superdome on the night of the national championship game when LSU won, but that was also the night of the inauguration. And, of course, he couldn't have been nicer there. And then we had a chance to visit in Washington last weekend, and again we had a great visit. And he and I both talked about the fact that now it's time to govern. The political season, mm-hmm. as it relates to me at least, is over. I know he's in his own political season, but I assured him that that's what I wanted to do. In fact, I reminded him that was my commitment to the people of Louisiana as well.
And today, you are being shadowed by two students from St. Joseph's Academy here in Baton Rouge. I know their father as well, and I've gotten to know them a little bit, Kendall Orso and Nicole Mann. And, Governor, I'm sure you're always ready to impress the young people of our state.
Well, first of all, St. Joseph's Academy is a great school, and they produce a lot of tremendous graduates who go on to do wonderful things, and so I'm excited about what they do, and really education around the state. But Kendall and Nicole both have exceptional promise, and looking for great things out of them. I was speaking to the Board of Regents earlier today, and I'm glad to have a couple of young people with me who are still in school, because for the first time in a long time, our state is investing in education again, and we're doing it at all levels, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about this, but whether it's early childhood, K through 12, or higher education, we are investing and not just spending. We have strategic mm-hmm. plans, and we're looking to improve education outcomes and close achievement gaps and create more opportunity and prosperity by having the most job-ready workforce in the country here in Louisiana. So that's all a big part of what we're doing, but it's for the benefit of people like Kendall and Nicole.
And at least one of them, maybe both, plan on going to school here in Louisiana.
I hope by the end of the day they'll both plan to stay in Louisiana for school.
And I asked you where your son is going.
My son will go to LSU next year, so he's a senior this year at University High School. And I think being on LSU's campus the last 4 years, and especially this year, with the tremendous football season that they had, and that's where most of his friends are going to go. And I'm really happy that he's going to be an LSU Tiger. I mean, he's excited about it, and I am too.
And briefly, the family lived on campus.
We did. Well, actually, it's right off campus across the lake, but we were in the chancellor's house for a little bit after the flood in 2016, because a lot of people don't know that in August the mansion actually flooded. So for about 3 months we lived over there, and it was a great opportunity because we spent a lot of time talking to students. Because as you know, that's a lot of exercise happens around that lake, and we would spend a lot of time talking to students and faculty members, and they had a lot of fun over there.
They probably did a double take, though.
They did, but it was fun because Donna and I, we exercised regularly too, and so we'd get out and walk with them and talk to them.
In fact, your then neighbor, Hinson Moore, told me, he said, why was Governor Edwards around my neighborhood the other week? I said, I think it's his neighborhood now, too.
At the end, we spent a lot of time talking, too, because he would walk his dog often around the lakes. And I saw him just the other day when I visited LSU to look at the progress at Memorial Tower.
Yeah.
And Congressman Moore was there, and I had an opportunity to speak to him again. But he's a regular around the lakes, and of course it's great to see him in good health and doing as well as he is.
Yeah, he just made 80 years old, and he looks great and served our country and our state
Yes,
with
he
great
did.
distinction. You mentioned the Memorial Tower. We haven't talked about that, but any veteran or any person in Louisiana will take pride in what's happening at the Old War School.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous project. That Memorial Tower was built to commemorate the war dead from the First World War for Louisiana citizens, but it kind of fell into disrepair, and through basically it's a 50-50 match of private sources and then state capital outlay. We are renovating that, and it's really coming along extremely well. And it's going to include a plaza out behind, between the library and Memorial Tower as well. And it should be done in a few months, and I encourage everybody to go by and take a look at it. It's exceptional.
And hopefully the library will get spruced up as well.
Well, we need more than sprucing up, but until we get a new one, we need to spruce that one up, yes.
A few housekeeping items. I saw a story the other day, Governor, that 12% of the Delaware budget is from unclaimed property, and there's a big dispute about that in Louisiana, as we know, and your administration's gone to court. What's happening there?
Well, we filed a mandamus action in the 19th Judicial District Court here in Baton Rouge because the treasurer thus far has not transferred into the general fund the amount of the unclaimed property that was appropriated by the legislature. No different than they've done for many years. They appropriated, I think it was $25 million to go from unclaimed property into the general fund. He hasn't transferred it, and the fact of the matter is it's the law, and we don't believe he has the discretion not to do that. And so we've asked the court to intervene, settle this dispute, and hopefully get the money transferred into the general fund. And again, this is not any different than has happened for many years. And I'll add that at no time during the appropriations process did the treasurer ever go either to the House Appropriations Committee or to the Senate Finance Committee and register any objection. So hopefully we can work through this and get the money where it's supposed to be by, as a matter of law, and get this behind us.
Have you followed the stories about Attorney General Landry closely?
Only what I read in the paper over the weekend. I was a little surprised to find out that he doesn't regard his job as Attorney General as a full-time job. And obviously the allegations are troubling, but they're allegations at this point. He'll get an opportunity to respond, I suspect, if he chooses to do that. And we'll just see how it turns out.
There was a time in Louisiana when stories like that were commonplace about public officials. That has ebbed significantly in the last generation. But what does it do, if anything, regarding the state's perception?
Well, obviously it's not good, but at this time, it's a newspaper report. I think the Attorney General gets the opportunity to respond at some point, but I do think it's incumbent upon him to do that because the allegations set forth in the article were numerous and troubling, and we'll see how that turns out for him. But I think it's a good thing that you're not seeing those stories as often today about the state of Louisiana. And we need to try to make sure that we stay on the trajectory that we've been on lately, and we don't go back to being in the news too frequently with public officials who are caught up in various allegations of impropriety.
And you have taken some criticism for not putting a teacher pay raise in the proposed budget. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the budget does include $39 million additional for the MFP, which is a 1.375% increase. We're going to be working with the stakeholders, all the education stakeholders, whether they're teachers, superintendents, school board members, as well as the BESI board members, to move as much of that $39 million as possible into a pay raise. You know, last year we had $140 million additional for K through 12 education. 101 went to pay raises, $1,000 for teachers, $500 for support workers. And my goal remains the same, and that's to get to at least the Southern average in teacher pay. The good news is 21 districts are there. The bad news is we have 69 districts.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some work to do. And my commitment is to do that over the course of this term as we are able. I think, as you know, Jim, we had to present a budget plan to the legislature without an REC forecast. And so we did it based on the most conservative forecast being offered by either economist who present their information to that conference. And therefore, we weren't able to do everything that we would like. But this is the beginning of the budget process, not the end, and we're going to work through this. And at the end of the day, I am confident that there will be a teacher pay raise this session in the legislature.
Sarah in Baton Rouge, you're first up with Governor John Bel Edwards. Sarah, you're on Ask the Governor.
Governor, good afternoon. Thank you for
Sarah.
taking my call.
Thank you.
I'm calling because I was shocked when I learned Monday that in Louisiana, women pay more for car insurance than men. And not only that, single women and widows in particular are paying more for car insurance than married women. And I was even more shocked and concerned when I saw that the insurance commissioner said that he supports these extra charges on women.
Yeah, well, Sarah, thank you for calling. And this is a significant issue. First of all, I hope you know, and all the listeners know, is we already have the largest gender pay gap in the country. And so if we're going to pay women less unfairly, we shouldn't charge them more unfairly. And I happen to think that that's the case with respect to auto insurance. It doesn't make sense to me. And by the way, women aren't alone in this, because poor people pay more than people who are not poor. Blue-collar people pay more than those who are not. We found out that military people who've been deployed pay more. And so this is something that can and should be stopped through effective regulation. We now have the ability to look at someone's driving record and determine what their auto rate should be. We shouldn't allow these extraneous matters to determine how much people pay. And it is particularly unfortunate when you have someone who's been married and then the husband dies and they're left a widow, which is probably the most difficult time in their life, financially and otherwise, and then they get a renewal notice on their auto policy and to find out that the premiums went up. So I don't think we should allow this, and I think it should be dealt with through regulation. I do anticipate that there will be some legislation filed too, but hopefully Commissioner Donlin will choose to exercise some of the authority that he has to rein this in.
Penny in New Orleans. Good afternoon, Penny. You're on with Governor Edwards.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm a big fan of Governor Edwards. I voted for you. And my question is, how do you plan to work with the new legislature to mitigate our existential climate crisis?
Well, thank you, Penny, and I very much appreciate your statement of support and the vote. Obviously, we're going to work with this legislature, generally speaking, the way that we did 4 years ago, and that is by being very accessible, trying to make sure that we approach things not from a party perspective, but from the perspective of everyone being a Louisianan first, and that we can tackle challenges from that approach, which is what we were able to do last term, especially as it related to things like criminal justice reform, Medicaid expansion, and tackling that budget deficit. Now, with respect to the climate crisis, we hit the perfect trifecta here along the coast because we have subsidence, sea level rise, and coastal erosion all happening at the same time. and certainly that is exacerbated by climate change. One of the things that we can do, and we've already started on this in the legislature, is working to capture and sequester carbon. And we've already passed a statutory scheme by which we can do this in Louisiana. It is possible, and I'm not declaring it's our goal yet because I have some more work to do. It is possible that Louisiana could be carbon neutral in a not too distant future if Congress will pass the 45Q tax credit that will really allow this new effort to blossom. And here in Louisiana, I think we can take advantage of that. The other things that we're doing, we're replacing around the world dirtier coal-burning power plants, for example, and replacing those with natural gas, which burn much cleaner and it's better to transport as well. And that's a role that Louisiana's playing. As you know, have a lot of natural gas. We have the pipeline density, and we now have the LNG facilities that are popping up along the coast.
Cynthia in Baker. Good afternoon, Cynthia. You're with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Thank you very much. Governor Edwards, I was wondering why in the world are so many of the roads in northern part of the parish and in northern Baton Rouge in such worse condition than they are in the southern part of the parish and in South Baton Rouge.
Cynthia, first of all, thank you for your call. I don't obviously have an explanation for you. I'm assuming that you're talking about state highways. I know you mentioned roads, which means they could be parish roads or roads in the city of Baker, or they may be highways for which the state is primarily responsible. I don't know the answer to that. If you are still on the phone and you have particular highways in mind, I would appreciate you giving that information to Jace, and I will have someone from the Department of Transportation reach out to you so that we can talk about the maintenance efforts that we have going on in northern East Baton Rouge Parish. I will tell you that we are really strapped in terms of the resources that we have, and I know you've heard it said before that I think they've estimated the current backlog in transportation infrastructure related to both preservation and maintenance on the one hand and new capacity on the other, somewhere around $14 billion. But we're doing everything we can, but obviously we want to do better. And if you will give us that particular information about some of the roads that you're interested in, we'll get you a more specific answer.
Miguel, thank you, Cynthia. Miguel in Lafayette. Miguel, you were on the air with Governor Edwards.
Oh, thank you so much. Good afternoon, Governor.
Hi,
I
Miguel.
sent you a package during the election season after the primary. It was a George Jones record. I sent it from Camp Pendleton with my well wishes, and I want to congratulate you on your win. The question I had was regarding some of the things that are being circulated right now on social media. Even the Advocate and Times-Picayune, other publications are circulating some of these rumors. My question is regarding the fiscal year budget forecast and how some of the allotments are being made in school districts regarding some of the future forecasted teacher pay raises.
Okay, Miguel, thank you for the call. So obviously, I'm probably not seeing the same social media that you are, and I'm not sure what you're talking about when you talk about rumors and so forth. We do not have an REC forecast, but it was time for us to present a spending plan to the legislature. We did that at the Joint Legislative Committee on the budget Friday before last. That budget request for them had $99 million more for education. And 25 million of that was for K through 12, 30 million of that was for higher ed. We had $36 million, which is a 1.375% increase in the MFP, which goes to K through 12. In addition to that, by the way, there's $26 million more because the weighted per pupil amounts changed, and so we had to appropriate some additional dollars. And then I think the lottery proceeds had been reduced some, and we had to replace those dollars with general fund. But of the $39 million, the 1.375% increase, we are working to have as much of that used for a teacher pay raise, in addition to the $1,000 pay raise we gave last year. And so we believe we're going to be successful. And this is the start of the budget process. It's not the end. And when we finally get an REC forecast, it may actually allow us to do better than that. And there may be some other opportunities outside of the forecast that would allow us to do better than that as we move forward with the legislative session. By the way, thank you very much for the George Jones. He happens to be my favorite country music artist of all time. And of course, I still think the best song of all time is He Stopped Loving Her Today. So thank you very much, Miguel.
Yeah, did you like Tammy Wynette when she was doing duets with him?
Oh, yeah. I've liked everything that he's done, to be honest with you. Although the only time I tried to see him in person, he was a no-show.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, he had his demons.
That's right. They called him No-Show Jones, right?
But he was an amazing performer, and his music is everlasting. And the governor is here for another half hour for show number 47. He does this once a month. This is show number 47, and we go to the most frequent caller in the history of Ask the Governor. It's David in David in Baton Rouge. You're next. James in Longview, Texas. And JC, you're going to have to tell me which line. There we go. James, you are on Ask the Governor. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Jim, and good afternoon, Governor, and I'm glad to have the new title. So,
hi, James.
It's great talking to you both.
Yes, sir.
Anyhow, I just want to compliment you, Governor. I read where you're planning to establish a rural revitalization council. I knew that would be a tongue twister and all that, and I think it's a great idea because so many smaller communities are overlooked for jobs, clean water, housing, roads, broadband, and I know that's one of the purposes of the upcoming federal census, to count people, so programs can cover everybody. I'm just wondering, with your program, how often, or do you even have it settled yet, how often will your group meet, and do you plan on doing a village by village or maybe clusters within a particular parish?
Well, James, first of all, thank you very much for your call. And I was with the Police Jury Association. They were meeting in Shreveport on Friday, and that's where I signed the executive order creating this advisory council on rural revitalization. Something that's critically important, not just here in Louisiana, but around the country. And I was very happy to announce that former Senator and also my first Chief of Staff, Ben Nevers from Washington Parish, is going to chair that. And really, they're going to do their work in subcommittees, and those subcommittees are going to meet around the state. Because we're going to look at a bunch of different things, whether it's economic development, education, transportation, health care, broadband, as you mentioned. And a lot of these things are related, looking at infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, bridges, and that sort of thing, to try to figure out where are the biggest challenges and what can we do strategically to revitalize rural communities. And what resources are available, whether it's state, federal, local, private, you name it. And then we're going to come back in January of next year, get a report from them, which will prioritize those efforts, and we're going to see how much of a difference we can make. The good news is we haven't had a rural hospital close in Louisiana, which is very, very helpful, both as it relates to health care being provided to these individuals, but also in many rural communities, the hospital is the number one employer with the biggest payroll in the parish. And so that's a good thing. We've got some other things that we're working on, obviously. But I do appreciate the call, and I also appreciate the fact that you linked it to the census, because census-driven allocations of funding are about $15 billion in the state of Louisiana, and we really need to make sure that everyone is counted, both as it relates to political representation so that we don't, for example, lose a member of Congress, but also so that we can accurately draw new district lines, whether it's the U.S. House of Representatives, the Supreme Court, the state legislature, you name it. So next month, households are going to start receiving by mail and by delivery census forms, and we need them to participate. And this will be the first time ever that the primary means of responding will be online. So that's never happened before. But if people want a paper questionnaire, they'll have a phone number that they can call and request one of those as well.
Mike in Baton Rouge. Mike, good afternoon. You are on Ask the Governor. Hello, Mike.
Governor, glad to talk to you. I am a proud member of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 198 in Baton Rouge and Lake Charles. And we have qualified people ready to work in Lake Charles, Baton Rouge. We got them all over the country. And my question is there any way to stop giving tax incentives to companies that don't even want to hire in the country? And I'll hang up and listen to your call. Before I hang up, I was a doubter the first time you ran. I am no longer a doubter.
Well, Mike, thank you very much for calling. And obviously, tax incentives that are financed by taxpayers in Louisiana ought to make sense for our state. And the biggest tax incentive that we give is the industrial tax exemption program. And we have tied that program for the first time ever to jobs created or to a very compelling case of jobs retained. And obviously, we're trying to create jobs here in Louisiana for Louisianans wherever possible. Before you can bring in the foreign labor legally for these types of projects, you have to demonstrate that there's not the labor available from U.S. citizens. And so that's obviously a very important requirement. And I don't know whether you're calling about the newspaper article that was run over the weekend with respect to the Attorney General, but that is a process that he was supposed to have gone through before those jobs could be offered to the individuals, I think in this case, coming out of Mexico. Obviously, we need to keep those jobs in Louisiana for Louisianans wherever possible. And if not Louisianans, for some reason, if we don't have enough skilled labor, then people from elsewhere around the country. That's obviously really important. It is something that's important to me, which is why I revamped the ITEP program and I tied it to job creation. But Mike, thank you very much for the call.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Now, there were reactions to that story you referenced that indicated that we just didn't have enough workers in Louisiana, that they had the Attorney General and his brother and others who were involved had to go out of state to find them. Is that your perception?
Well, it's not my perception, especially on that particular project, because I think the article, and I don't remember if the figure was 110, 113, there were skilled welders and pipe fitters from Louisiana who applied for jobs. I don't think any of them got hired, but they did apply for work with respect to that particular project. So no, that's not my understanding.
877-217-5757 is your number. One line is open for the first time in a while if you'd like to grab it. Cody in New Orleans. Cody, good afternoon. You're on with Governor John Bel Edwards. Hi, Cody.
How are we doing today, guys?
Doing fine, Cody. Thank you for calling.
Yes, sir. Governor Edwards, I am involved in the special inspections industry throughout the state. I work for an engineering firm, and several of the private inspection firms throughout the state, I happen to be in the New Orleans and Baton Rouge area primarily, have shown interest in getting more involved with the LSU CCC. And I'm curious, we've attempted many times to reach out to those guys at the state level to express our interest in the Louisiana Uniform Construction Code Council, I believe, is the acronym there. And we have not gotten much response. And so I ask you, sir, what can we do to better get in contact with those guys so that the private inspectors out here doing structural and other special inspections in this state can more closely align with our building officials to have a better private / public interface there to continue doing a good job and working with the international code committees and different councils and things like that to.
Well, Cody, thank you for calling. Don't get off the phone just yet. I want you to talk to Jace, give him your contact information, and then I will have someone reach out to you to start that dialogue. That is not a subject matter that I am familiar with to the point where I can speak to it in any depth on this phone call. But I do know how to reach out and get people to call you back so that you all can start that dialogue, and hopefully that will be fruitful for you.
Thank you, Cody. David in Baton Rouge. Hello, David. You're on the air.
Hi, Governor Jim. Thank you for taking my question. Your office recently posted an opportunity for college students, and I was hoping that you could talk more about the Governor's Fellows Program and why you'd recommend the Governor's Fellows Program.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, David.
David, I appreciate the call. The Governor's Fellows Program, this will be the third year that we've done it, and this was something that was started by my chief of staff, Mark Cooper, who does a great job. But it is a really good program, and I was in front of the Board of Regents today asking for their support, their continued support, to make sure that we have as many students who are interested in this apply as possible. So higher education students at universities in Louisiana or from Louisiana and maybe they're at a university outside of our state, they can apply to participate. And if they are selected, they will come to Baton Rouge for the summer. They will get a stipend. They will be given a place to live on LSU's campus. It's a program that is overseen by Dr. Lorenz there. It is for college credit, but you get matched up with and spend the summer working with a cabinet official. And it is just a wonderful program that I think has been very rewarding for students, some of whom have actually gotten hired out of that program.
Chris in Lake Charles. Chris, good afternoon. You're on
Hi.
Ask the Governor.
Hi, this is Chris Collins. Governor, I want to thank you for all your efforts, for your service to our country and to the people here in Louisiana.
Thank you, Chris.
I read the advisory, Governor's Advisory Commission on Protection and Coastal Protection Restoration efforts. Real interested in that because I think our natural resources are so important to the bounty of this state. Can you tell me how that commission translates into action about coastal restoration and conservation? I know it's an advisory commission, but I'm interested in learning more about what they're actually doing and how it works.
Well, thank you very much. So Chip Klein is my lead person on the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, and he coordinates the efforts of CPRA with the advisory commission that is made up of individuals around the state who have a particular interest, expertise, educational background that lend themselves to being able to contribute to the formation and revision, if necessary, of our master plan. So we have a $50 billion coastal restoration master plan that we envision investing that amount over 50 years in order to offer protection to the 2.5 million people who live and work along the coast, but also to restore our coastal wetlands as well. And that's not just an academic exercise. We have revenue that we get from hydrocarbon production in the Gulf. We get revenue that comes from the BP oil spill. We have revenue that we generate in Louisiana, whether it's capital outlay or surplus dollars. And we actually have more projects underway right now than at any point in our state's history. And I'm very happy, Chris, and excited to tell you that with the projects we're going to break ground on over the next 4 years, when those projects are completed, we believe we will be creating more land than we're losing, which is a huge turning point in this battle for coastal restoration. So the advisory folks at the Advisory Commission does a tremendous job, and they're very, very important working with us in the legislature to make sure that we're getting it right. We're in a battle that means we have to, I should say we're in a race against time, and we have to get it right. And so the advisory folks really do a good job in helping us to accomplish that.
Mike in New Iberia. Mike, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Governor Edwards, Mike Manus. In 1993, with the help of a few folks, we did a study on the high cost of auto insurance in Louisiana, and the one variable different from Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas was our number of trial lawyers per capita. That was the variable that tipped it. We had the highest rates. The rates were the same for collision, comprehensive, but tort liability, our rates went off the board. I'll send that to Jim Inkster, that report, if he wants to share it. And this was, again, before billboards and before the advertisement is as aggressive as it is today.
I guess Mike's making the point that trial lawyers are somewhat responsible for high insurance rates. Do you share that belief?
Well, first of all, I'll be happy to look at the report that he's talking about. And I think he said it's from 1993.
Yeah, 27 years.
Yeah, so we'd have to see.
Half a lifetime ago for you, by the way.
Yeah, what that looks like today. I do think that we need to take a look at a multi-pronged effort to lower auto insurance premiums in Louisiana. Over the last few years, they actually have been going down, but they still are too high. And we need to do it from a regulatory perspective, and I think we had a call on that already from Sarah in Baton Rouge, the 1st call today. And then we can look at some legislation as well. You know, there's some things that I actually tried to do in 2008, I think it was, as a legislator, for excuse me, for example, to double the prescriptive period from 1 year to 2. We have the shortest period. Most people would call that statute of limitations. Right. We have the shortest period in the country. I happen to think that promotes litigation. It was opposed at the time by the insurance folks, but now it's part of their efforts to enact tort reform that could potentially lower auto insurance premiums. So obviously there's some common ground there, and I think there's some things that we can work on together, and I look forward to doing that.
And it'll be a big issue at the session. I think that goes without saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Aaron in New Orleans. Aaron, you are on Ask the Governor. Hi. Good afternoon.
Hi, Governor Edwards. Just wanted to say thanks for taking my call, and thanks for being open to forums like this. I think it's really great.
Thank you, Aaron.
Just wanted to ask, I've lived in New Orleans for about 15 years now, and in that time period, the cost of living has gone up significantly, especially in the last decade, and living wages haven't really gone up much. So in your second term, do you have any specific plans to tackle either, the affordability costs here or, kind of the stagnant wages here?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Aaron. And we're doing a number of things in order to try to address that. One of which is we know that housing is particularly expensive in New Orleans in areas where you have a lot of development and you have families that have been living in these areas for generations that are sort of being priced out of them. So affordable housing is really important, and we're working through the Louisiana Housing Corporation. It's a conversation I had as recently as yesterday with the mayor, in fact. We also know that $7.25 is not a meaningful wage in 2020. That happens to be the minimum wage. It hasn't been changed since 2009. That's the last time Congress addressed it. I'm pretty sure they're out of the business. They told us that it's up to the states now to do that. And we're one of the very few states in the country that don't have its own minimum wage. I think we need to address that. And, of course, I've been on this effort for the previous 4 years as well. And I'm going to continue to work with the legislature and try to see if we can have a modest but meaningful increase in the minimum wage. And I'll get back to what I told Sarah. We have to get rid of the gender pay gap. We have a lot of women in this country who are making 66 cents on the dollar on average compared to what men make when they have the same qualifications doing the same job. But when they go to the store, things don't cost 66% as much. And we need to address that as well. And when we do, we're going to have stronger families and our state will be fairer.
Michael in Baton Rouge. Michael, you're on the air with the governor.
Hey, Governor, you ran with one of your major platforms being raising the teacher pay to the regional average.
Yes.
I was wondering if you expect the teacher unions to strike since you haven't followed through on that.
Well, first of all, Michael, the answer is no, I don't expect them to strike. But secondly, if you will recall what my commitment was and what it remains is over the course of the term to get to the Southern regional average. We made the first installment on that last year in 10 years with a $1,000 teacher pay raise. We have $39 million in the budget this year for additional investment in K-12 education, and we're going to make every effort to move as much of that for additional teacher pay as possible this year, and then we have the remaining years of the term in order to close the gap. The good news is we have 21 districts out there now that are at the Southern average, but we also have a number of districts, obviously, who are not, that are not at the Southern average. So we still have some work to do we're gonna get it done, and I have no doubt about that.
Paul and Ethel. Paul, you're on the air with the governor.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You're on the air.
Oh, hello, Governor.
Hi, Paul.
I like you and I supported you, but my comment in question involves older workers. I am an older worker who was forced to retire because I can't find a job, and I believe that age discrimination is more rampant than ever.
Paul, thank you very much for the call, and I'm obviously very disappointed that has been your experience. I would ask you to remain engaged because in many areas of our state we have a really good job market right now. Unemployment is low. It's historically low, and we've had private sector job growth for many, many months in a row. I think we're closing in on 18 months. But if you could give your contact information to Jace, I can have someone from the Workforce Commission contact you and talk about jobs that are open in your area. And of course, the area that you're able to work in will depend upon your particular ability to travel and so forth. But I will have someone contact you so that we can help you get a job. And I will tell you, age discrimination is a problem, not just here, but I think everywhere. And we and the federal government, by the way, have certain laws and protections that are designed to make sure that doesn't happen. And I don't know whether you have a particular case that you're going to be able to bring or not, but you can share that information when the folks from the Workforce Commission contact you.
Thank you. And we're only about a minute away, or a little less than that, Governor, but a listener did have a question about the Exxon fire, and that's, of course, not far from where you are. Was there any environmental danger to citizens nearby?
Well, I don't think we know yet. It's still under investigation. They haven't issued the report that they will issue at some point in the near future. I have not been told by state police or by DEQ that there was off-site emissions that were dangerous. I can't say there wasn't. I just don't know yet. And the reporting that I have received, although I think it's incomplete, suggests that there was not. I know that there's going to be a meeting tonight in the community led by Senator Fields. We're going to get some reports. The investigation will continue, and we'll know more soon.
Thank you, Governor. John
Thank
Bell
you.
Edwards. He'll be back next month.